This week, we are exploring the second most planted varietal in all of Italy. And in this week's tip of the week, we're going to answer the question, what the heck does the word terroir mean? All of that coming up next. Hello and welcome to Wine This Week with Scott Leek. I'm excited to open the varietal today, Montepulciano. Before I do though, I want to point out that what some astute viewers might have noticed, that last week we were doing the varietal Menthea, this week Montepulciano. Alphabetically, there's a really important one in between the two that I have skipped that I will do the following week, and I am so excited to share for you that video, and you'll understand then why I did this slight little switcheroo. For now, let's get on to Montepulciano. We need to talk about how unbelievably frustrating Italy is in their naming conventions. So when we talk about Chianti, Barolo, Valpolicella, those are all regions, and that is how we know those wines. But in this case, we're having Montepulciano di Abruzzo. So much like Aglianico, where it's the grape, or Barbera d'Asti, where it's the grape, and then the name of the city where it's from, that's what's going on here as well. So there isn't a whole lot of consistency. If anyone knows how and why Italy sometimes goes by the region, sometimes goes by the varietal, sometimes has both in the same sentence on the label, please explain it to me because I don't get it. But I want to make sure that when you're getting a Montepulciano, and that's the grape varietal you want, that you get the right bottle, because there is another bottle of wine you can find called Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. That is the noble wine of the town of Montepulciano. That is in Tuscany. It is a Sangiovese grape. It is not the Montepulciano grape. So there's the Montepulciano grape, and there is Montepulciano, the town or the city, and they are not at all the same thing. So just be aware, buyer beware, when you're shopping for Montepulciano, the grape, it should say Montepulciano di Abruzzo. There's some other ways and other places you can get it, but this is the most common one we're going to find in the States. All right, what do we know about the grape? So this is a late ripening but high yielding varietal. So they need to be very careful on harvesting and vineyard maintenance, because in really warm, hot climates, they can produce a ton of this stuff, and they do. It is the second most planted grape in Italy behind Sangiovese. There is actually more acres of this one grape planted in Italy than there is in all varietals in Napa Valley combined. So huge production here, and you kind of need to be careful about quality, because if you get a cheap Montepulciano, it might not be all that amazing. You get into a little cooler climate, this one that's a Riserva at $20 hopefully is going to be a better quality one. But quality has been on the rise overall, and this can be a really good value play. Let's get to tasting and see which camp this one falls in. This week's wine is the Illuminati 2018 Montepulciano di Abruzzo. The wine is from the IIlico single vineyard, and this is a Riserva. So the combination of the fact that this is a single vineyard wine and it is a Riserva wine, meaning it was aged for at least 12 months in oak, in this case Slovenian oak. Hopefully these give us an indication that this is one of the higher quality Montepulcianos you can buy. At only $20, I'm cautiously optimistic that this is going to be a really good wine. Let's get started with it. So right off the bat, I really like the color on this. I can tell not much lines shown through on the paper. It's very ruby, but it's a deep ruby color. It's not a full garnet, not like that inky purple color, but beautiful. So on the nose, my first instinct was candy, and I can't quite pinpoint what candy it is, but there's something candied about it that is really nice. But it's dark cherries, it's black plum, there's dark chocolate involved. I'm not really getting some oak components. Maybe there's a hint of vanilla, but it's more almost like toasted coconut, maybe even caramel. So it almost makes me think of the Girl Scout cookies, those the caramel delights. Oh, It's not quite that good, but it kind of reminds me of it a little bit with all those different components. But it's much more of a dark, like the type of chocolate bar I get in my stocking from Santa at Christmas because I won't spend the money on it during the rest of the year. That really good, high quality dark chocolate. There's a little bit of herbalness to it as well. I'm not going to quite claim to know what it is just yet. Maybe I'll tell on the palate. And let's get to the palate. This is a nice wine. This is a really nice wine. Whew. Okay. Man, there's a lot to process here. First off dry. I'm not going to fully go dry on this. It's not sweet at 13.5% alcohol. I'm guessing there's maybe a hint of residual sugar left in this, but because of the fruit, because of the dark chocolate, there's all these perceptions that it's off dry, not fully dry. There's some sweetness to it. Great. Fruit's really coming through, but a lot of other stuff. Acidity wise, medium plus, and that is very common among, well, Italian wines in general, but particularly Montepulciano. These tend to be medium high to high in acidity. This is definitely there. It's got a nice juiciness component to it. But there are medium plus tannins as well. So I'm feeling it all in my upper gums, my lower gums, my cheeks, my tongue, but it's soft. It's not harsh. It's not sandpapery, but there's that kind of astringent drying out sensation. But then there's also this juiciness from the acidity. I love that combination. Body-wise, this is probably a medium. I'm not going to quite go medium plus on the body. And with the alcohol being at 13.5, the alcohol is just right. I'm not really feeling the heat. I actually smelled a little bit of alcohol, and I didn't really get as much of it on the palate. But it tends to be higher alcohol, gives you more body. So I'm going medium on the body on this one, and it's got a really good finish. I'm enjoying the finish. I'm getting some of the oak aspects. I'm just going to call it toast, more so than like cedar or actual oak or vanilla. I'm just going to call it toast on the finish. A lot to like about this. I'm going to take another sip because it's just fun. So even as I had my mouth open and I'm drawing it in, I'm like sucking in the aromas of that dark chocolate. Dark cherries, dark black plum, which is kind of cool because most Italian red wines tend to gravitate towards the red fruits. And this isn't like all the way on the blackberry, blackcurrant end of the spectrum, but it's that nice bridge between the two of the dark cherry, black plum that's just great. Yeah, that coconut caramel, hazelnut is coming through on this. And yeah, that herbal, just dried herbs. I'm going to call it oregano just because it's Italian, so why not call it oregano? This is a great wine. I really, really like this. Balance is great. Fruit. The fruit's not overpowering. It's not like smack you in the face Shiraz kind of thing, but it's got a good core of the fruit. Refreshing acidity, good tannins, all of it in nice balance. The intensity is not over the top, but it's there, and there's good structure to the whole bottle. The complexity is pretty impressive too. I just kept getting new things each time I smelled and tasted it. So gobs of points for the complexity. And the length was really good too. Good finish on this. So all in, I'm gonna go a little high here today and call this an 8 out of 10 wine. This is solid. And at 20 bones, man, impressive. I would highly encourage you, if you've not had a Montepulciano in a while, to go and try one. And the nice thing is, $15, $20, you're not breaking the bank on this either. And the things you compare this with are pretty good. This is full and kind of rich. So I'm going to say something kind of fatty, and being that it's Italian, kind of, pizza comes to mind. So a sausage pizza, get some of the fat from the sausage and the richness of that, or just flat out have a bratwurst on a bun, and that would probably be good too. Brisket with the richness and fattiness of a brisket would be good. Shout out to my dad here, because I know he loves having Chianti with like good mac and cheese, not like the Kraft, but like the good stuff. So make yourself a good mac and cheese, maybe get one of those sausages with little bits of fennel in it, chop it up, throw it in there. I don't know if that's a thing, but that would be good with this too. So a lot of versatility for the food because of the acid, the fruit, the richness of it. Solid wine. I am excited. I cannot wait to have, I'm having pizza with this tonight, and there's definitely going to be sausage on it. So find yourself a Montepulciano, give it a try. What is terroir? Well, terroir is a French word, much like the term déjà vu, that we just never came up with an English equivalent for. And you know what déjà vu is, but if you were to describe it to somebody, it takes you a little while to describe it. And terroir is kind of the same way. In short, it is a way of describing where a wine comes from and the impact of the soil, the climate, the elevation, the fog, the wind, all of those aspects of where the wine is from that impacts how the wine is perceived and how it tastes and smells. And for some people, particularly in the old world, this is a big deal. In the new world, it's not as important to us because, quite frankly, we haven't been making wine as long, and we're more focused on the varietal as opposed to the land. In California, Napa, Sonoma, it doesn't really matter which valley you're in. You care more about, is this Cabernet, is this Merlot, is this Pinot Noir? The varietal is the focus. But in the old world, whether you're in Italy or in France, they care a lot more about where is it from. And I'll give you an analogy that might click for some people as well. I used to work in a coffee shop, and I would have certain clientele that would love Colombian wines or Colombian coffee, and others would love Guatemalan. And boy, the day that we had Kona coffee, everybody went nuts for that, because some people would claim they could tell the difference between those coffee beans grown in Colombia versus Costa Rica versus Honduras or wherever. And if the French grew coffee, I'm sure they'd have a snobby word for that too. But when it comes to the wine, you got to think about the fact that some of these places in Burgundy, in Italy, wherever it may be, they've been growing these vines and taking care of these grapes for centuries. They've gone through generation after generation, and there is a pride in the place and the land, and the focus is on that more than it is the actual grape. The grape is often defined by law, what can be grown there, so they're just growing what they're allowed to grow, but the place matters to them. And much like if you were to meet me out in public, you can pretty easily tell that I'm Midwestern. You can tell where someone grew up when you meet them. They're a reflection of that. And terroir is a way to describe that in wine. It is a way to say, I can tell where this wine is from. It is a reflection of its home and nowhere else. Thank you for watching another episode of Wine This Week. I hope you enjoyed it. If so, please like and subscribe. Join me next week as I have a really fun episode planned for everyone, and I hope you're going to enjoy it as much as I will. You won't enjoy it as much as I will, but I hope you enjoy it more than most episodes. Until then, keep trying new wines, and as always, cheers. This week we're talking about a really interesting white wine. Remember, the W sounds like a V, and the last syllable you pronounce meaner, as in, shit. Today's wine is the Petroscura let's try that again. Today's wine is the Petroscura. I don't know if that's how you say it, but it sounds good. The Lambrusco Grasparara. This is a tough one. Let's do this one more time. Too much rain, so the wines were not all that great across the board, but they ended up being, that was louder than I meant for it to be. And this week's tip of the week, I just spit all over. Let's try that again. Whew.